Hey guys, how are you? Today's book is Train to Pakistan by Khushwant Singh. So, this book is basically, this novel basically weaves some personal and political philosophies uh, against the backdrop of one of the most traumatic periods of India and Pakistan partition in 1947. So, in this analysis of the book, I will be telling you about some of the historical events that took place at that time, which this novel basically mentions. And this is basically a fictional novel that the writer used that specific event, that train to Pakistan. There was basically a last train that was going to Pakistan during the partition of India and Pakistan, and the story is basically fictional, but the 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 basically the problems the people face that are mentioned in this book were real. Okay, the events were real. So it basically, let me just give you in a historical context that this book is basically about a fictional village named Mano Majra, and it is located on the border between India and Pakistan. And the village sort of represents India's diverse society, which this is basically before pre-partition, and where people of different faiths lived in relative harmony. And like before partition, it is said that there weren't any fights, there weren't any wars between India and partition. But after partition, wars and fights start to begin more and more. And this novel sort of also serves as a stark reminder of how the arbitrary lines drawn by colonial power and powers can lead to really Armageddon problems. Like they can cause catastrophe, and there are consequences to every decision that the upper level of people, like the politicians, make, and it affects the people of the country. And the historical context of the partition is really crucial in a way that, as it resulted in the forced displacement of millions, families were taken away. And like not even the families, it is said that the books of the libraries were divided, and the cutlery of the restaurants was divided. It was basically done like a 50-50 sort of a 50-50 sort of a partition in basically everything. It is also said that the birds of this region were also divided. In their poetry, it is mentioned. And there was loss of life that was really sad. And the character, the protagonist Singh, first-hand experience of the events provides a raw authenticity to the narrative of this book, and making it not just a story but a solemn account of human tragedy of that event of the partition. One of the most compelling themes in the novel is the exploration of the violence and the identity that took place in that event. The tranquility of Mano Majra, the village, is shattered in this novel when the reality of the partition seeps into the villagers' lives, exposing the fragility of the situation, that now they have to make decisions which will cause consequences for their coming generations. And the characters transitions from familial bonds to enmity. It demonstrates how external political dynamics can severely disrupt personal relationships of the people. And the character Singh sort of illustrates that kinships constructed over years can be liberated in moments of fear, and they can be changed, like just like a snap, because in the moments of fear and hatred reflects the tragedy of the events. And the novel also grapples the morality of the people in that specific situation during the partition. The novel grapples with profound questions of morality during the turmoil, during the massacre. A lot of people also died during that last train. Singh, the character protagonist, depicts characters who must navigate intricate moral dilemmas against the backdrop of violence. And there's the character Jagat Singh in the novel, for example, a character initially framed as a villain, as a really bad person due to his really bad lifestyle. As the narrative of the book unfolds itself and the catharsis happens in the book, Jagat sort of reveals a tragic weakness as his love for a lady, Nuran, drives his actions, ultimately leading him to sacrifice himself to save others, save the community, save the village. It sort of like shows the blurriness of the moral lines, which invites the reader to contemplate the complexity of the human nature in such circumstances. And like, for example, are we defined by our actions, or do circumstances shape our moral compass? And the character, the protagonist Singh, brings these questions forth with a raw, unflinching honesty, and it's sort of like it makes you feel that it resonates to you really, really deeply, that you can relate to it. Another powerful theme of the book is the critique of the power of dynamics, the switch also in the characters, and the indifference of those in authority. There's this character Hukam Chand in the book, the local magistrate, the moral decay within leadership. His character is that at the expense of justice and human life illustrates how leaders can succumb to self-interest, how they still do, and how the government only thinks for themselves and not for the people. Sort of, instead of protecting the innocent, the character prioritizes maintaining order, and it sort of like shows a reflection of how system of power often fail in times of bad circumstances for the country, and how when political structures are falling, and these situations are basically mentioned in the book, that what sort of consequences happened, what sort of things, the massacres, the sadness that took over the people during the partition of 1947. So let me just give you just an idea about the characters. That, for example, let's take Jagat Singh, the protagonist. He's basically Jagat Singh's character's arc is basically one of the most impactful elements of the book, because he is portrayed as a rugged and fearsome robber. He works with a group of people, a gang, and he robs people. Jagat sort of undergoes a remarkable transformation in the book, and to a tragic hero in the end. And it's sort of like his internal struggle between his violent upbringing and his innate compassion represents the moral conflict that he is having inside of his mind, and that many individuals faced during the partition. And this is basically one of the story of the character, that what he was feeling and how his circumstances were at that specific time, and what decisions he basically took according to his moral compass. And Singh sort of crafts the reader sort of crafts the character in a way that Jagat's love for Nuran, the lady he loves, is really, it has this intensity, it has this depth in it, and that ignites his it ignites his heroism, it ignites his moral compass into being a good man. At the end, his self, he sort of sacrifices, highlights, the book basically highlights his character's change, his phases, and it highlights the theme of redemption of the character in the face of brutality that character is facing. So this was one of the character that was basically from the streets. Now the character comes, he is basically Iqbal Singh, another character, and Iqbal Singh acts as a foil to the other character, Jagat Singh, and as an educated man with lofty ideals, his character represents rationality and logic in his decisions and a yearning for justice in a society that doesn't have justice, and which is basically spiraling in chaos at that time and even before. And however, as the violence escalates, it basically, his ideology deepens himself into that. He basically it basically exposes the limitations of his intellectualism. You know, that basically when confronted with the primal forces of hate and fear, how does he react? On the other hand, the guy from the streets who was a bad guy, how he reacted. And on the other hand, this is the logic, the intellectual guy, how he would react by using his moral intellectualism. And sort of it forces him to make decisions like everybody else. His journey from optimism to despair serves as a critical commentary of his basically how is education and the rational thought in the countering in how to counter deeply the decisions he's making. Then comes Noran, the love for the emotional heart of the novel, and she is also Jagat's love, the character I just mentioned. Her character is shaped by the societal norms and limitations imposed on women at the time during this sad period, and she embodies the personal toll of communal conflict, illustrating that how women's lives were back then and how basically she reacted to that partition in 1947, and how that decisions of the politicians affected that women also, and her love life and her resilience amid the chaos also signifies the longing of love, and that sort of persisted even during the times of profound despair. And she basically still loved that guy, and she basically did everything, and how her side of the story, the intensity of her love was for that person during that all chaos that was happening in the country. So this book, you can say, is a novel, but it also talks about the event, that about the last train that went to Pakistan from India. I also see this book as in terms of symbolism, you know, how the writer used symbols to present some ideas. Like, for example, the symbolism in this book, which I observed, that the train itself emerges as a haunting metaphor for loss and chaos and loss of life in a sense, and sort of a disruptive power of migration from one point to another point in your morality and in your spirituality. And it also sort of symbolizes both a journey toward a new identity, like from one phase to another, and the horrors of displacement, that, you know, like some sort of things, bad things that you leave behind during that process. Something like, to gain something, to become something, you have to kill certain parts of yourself so that you can make room for the new stuff. And sort of it has this sort of echoing the historical reality of countless passengers who faced violence and death in that train, and during that period of the partition. And the fictional village, the Mano Majra in India. I've also looked this book in terms of symbolism, that, for example, The train, this isn't just a train, it's a symbol of the partition itself, of basically uh, changing of morality from one phase to another, your spirituality, your decisions, your past self, basically a transition of something. And think of it as a monster carrying death and destruction, ripping apart lives and communities, and it represents the chaos, the forced movement of the people during that time of the partition, and the immense, extreme loss of life at that time. It's a scary image that stands for the whole terrible event, that what sort of things happened. And there certain, like, because it's history, there's no way of telling what is how authentic it is, but there's also this story that when the last train from India to Pakistan went, when the doors opened, there was blood all over, like literally people were dead, because there were fights and chaos and all of that during that partition. People started to hate each other, their friends, their families, because of their faith and all of that, because of the partition. Because, and not just on the India side, even Pakistan, like nobody's good, like both sides were wrong in a way, that they were killing their people, they were killing their people. So this is the book of an event that took place during the partition of 1947, and it's a tragic story also, and there are a few characters in it, and how it sort of shows how basically the transition of characters from how they were and how they became in the end, due to the circumstances they were put in. And yeah, that is pretty much it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video, and hope you guys like this video. And if you have any questions regarding this book or any other books, do let me know, and I guess see you next time.